Member for Flamborough-Glanbrook.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to discuss the question I asked the Minister of Foreign Affairs on February 19th regarding the boycott, divestment and sanction movement against Israel, also known by abbreviation as the BDS movement. Mr. Speaker, my question came the day after a motion put forward by my colleague, the Honourable Member for Parry Sound, Muskoka, condemning the BDS movement and calling it for what it is, an effort to demonize and de-legitimize the State of Israel and thereby single out the Jewish people. The motion, which was passed by this chamber on February 22nd, is emblematic of the values that unite us as Canadians: tolerance, respect, peace, and friendship. It does so by condemning any and all attempts by Canadian groups to promote the BDS agenda, which is, quite frankly, symptomatic of the new kind of anti-Semitism that we must not let fester here in Canada. The motion made a powerful statement in its categorical rejection of hate. Mr. Speaker, hate on the basis of race, creed, or colour or religion is appalling to all Canadians, and its strong rejection unites us. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, it united the vast majority of the members of this House, which is why it was so disturbing that the day after the debate, the very next day, when I asked the Minister if he and the Cabinet would be clear and unequivocal in condemning the BDS movement, the Minister attempted to score cheap political points by questioning our motives and labeling the motion an attempt at division. He admitted that he had reservations. With one cavalier comment, the Minister took defence for the principles and values that unite all Canadians and made them a partisan issue. Mr. Speaker, this is offensive to me. I suspect it's offensive to many of the 229 members of the House who voted in favour of the motion. And it's offensive to Canadians of Jewish descent who were reassured by the greater symbolism of the motion, a coming together of parliamentarians to confront a serious public societal and safety issue. Mr. Speaker, I know family members of Holocaust victims in my community who've attended rallies organized by the BDS movement on campuses, and they tell me they've been concerned for their safety in these circumstances. I've heard from the same Jewish students at the local university in the riding that I formerly represented at McMaster University. Sadly and alarmingly, in my own city, swastikas have been painted on garage doors of Jewish homes, and synagogues have felt compelled to increase security measures in recent years. Mr. Speaker, if there's any doubt that a new kind of anti-Semitism exists in our shores, let there be none. If there's any doubt that the ideology and views espoused by the BDS movement are a dangerous and slippery slope that should gravely concern all peoples who love freedom and tolerance, let there be none. If there are reservations that Canada's Parliament speaking in unifying voice against hate directed at Israel and Jews is somehow just partisanship, then let there be none. Mr. Speaker, here's my question for the Minister. Will he recant his unfounded and disingenuous comment that the motion was divisive? Or can he produce substantive evidence that would lend any legitimacy to his statement that a motion that stands up for the values that unite us as Canadians is somehow divisive?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Without reservation, the Government of Canada opposes the boycott, divestment and sanctions movement. Canada and Israel are not only close allies but steadfast friends. We value the strong economic and diplomatic relations between our two countries, and this is a relationship that continues to grow. We are also connected through the deep ties between our people and communities. We reject the BDS movement because we need more, not fewer ties between our people. We need to continue to collaborate in areas such as trade, academia, science, technology, and innovation. Mr. Speaker, I'd also like to stress that the boycott of Israel is at the expense of both Israelis and Palestinians. The BDS movement undermines the prospect of peace and does not lead to a constructive solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Instead, by unfairly singling out one actor, it exacerbates tensions. Our opposition to the BDS movement is not about taking sides in the conflict. It is about supporting dialogue over exclusion. Peace is achieved by building bridges between peoples, having more interaction, and through collaboration. We reject the BDS movement because the imposition of restrictions and sanctions threatens peace and prosperity. The boycott of Israel hurts Canadian and Israeli businesses and does nothing to improve the quality of life for the Palestinian people. The reality is that if we want peace and stability in the region, we need to address the immediate needs and support the economic prospects of the Palestinian people. This is why we continue to work with our partner, the Palestinian Authority, to provide assistance to the Palestinians and to help lay the groundwork for the viable, democratic and secure Palestinian state that will one day exist alongside a democratic and secure Israel. We reject the BDS movement because it is not leading to a constructive solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. A just and lasting peace requires direct negotiations between the parties. Efforts that target and punish one side exacerbate tensions and do nothing to advance this cause. It is simply not conducive to achieving peace in the Middle East. And finally, I would like to reiterate that Canada values its steadfast friendship and growing bilateral relations with Israel and our constructive and long-term partnership with the Palestinian Authority. Canada remains committed to a two-state solution of a secure, democratic Israel alongside a secure, democratic Palestinian state to be achieved through direct negotiations. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Flamborough-Glanbrook.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I thank the Parliamentary Secretary for her reply, and while I take her words and sentiment as most sincere and genuine, I believe that she and her colleagues share a steadfast belief in the values of freedom and tolerance and respect. I'll remind the members of the House the difference between just words and action. That is what we did with the motion on February 18th. We took action by recognizing that the actual threat and loudly condemning it, and I would ask them to do that at every opportunity in the future. As a member of the panel of inquiry in the Canadian Parliamentary Coalition to Combat Anti-Semitism in 2010 and 2011, along with other members of this House, I heard more than enough testimony from witnesses about anti-Semitic deeds taking place in Canada, and we're very concerned still today, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to ask the Parliamentary Secretary, in the absence of substantive evidence that the motion was divisive, to confirm for this House and all Canadians that the government will abide by the motion and be clear and unequivocal in its condemnation of the BDS movement, and at every opportunity educate Canadians on the error of the BDS movement. Will she do that tonight?
Mr. Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As was made patently clear during our debate in February, the Government of Canada is concerned about any effort that singles out Israel. The boycott, divestment and sanctions movement is clearly one such effort. It imperils necessary economic development. It hinders the lives of Israelis and Palestinians. We need academic dialogue and economic exchange, not isolation. While we support democracy and freedom of expression, of course, BDS is counterproductive to the peace process. We must work towards achieving a peaceful solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict that, through negotiation, will lead to the advent of two states living side by side in peace and security. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.